Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Ti99 4A, but not just any Ti99 4A. This is a different build. This is using modern parts in an old shell, in something that was a pile of junk. And now you're going to ask, probably, why am I doing this? I've done you know, machines which have been emulated, and but I think this machine itself deserves a little bit more. As I say, I've got a few Texas Instruments Ti99 4As, and the biggest issue is these modulators, and they cause all sorts of problems with the Ti99. And the biggest problem is that it's very difficult to get a PAL Ti99 4A to not use the RF. It's very difficult to convert it to composite, because the way this machine uses the RF is completely different to the way it uses the NTSC version, which you can actually convert to using more modern connections, and you don't have to go with RF. But the biggest issue with the Ti99 4As is that they're falling over, they're failing, they're breaking down. The boards are failing one after another, and this was a pile of junk I actually used to repair 4 others. But I'd like the idea of being able to use it on modern HDMI TVs. I like the idea of it being very clear, and also you can record off of a modern HDMI TV really well without flicker and without scan lines and so on, which makes it a bit more useful. But also cartridges. The Texas Instruments cartridges are starting to fail as well, simply because, you know, they're starting to corrode, and the edge connectors on them are starting to go and so on, and it's just getting more and more difficult to keep these machines running into the future. And my idea is that preserving the functionality of the machines, and if at all possible the way they looked and felt, is just as important, because they're not going to be around for many more decades to come without more and more failing. And if you can provide a way of having the same principle, the same machine, the same software, the same way it looks, feels, everything like that in a different package using modern components, well, that's not a problem, because, you know, it's not just the way they look and feel, it's the software that made these machines, and especially the early machines, that made them different. And having them kind of falling apart and being put into a rubbish tip or a refuse dump or just in the garbage is not really the way forward. So I've now got a machine here that is going to last for a long time. It's got a built-in database of software. It's got lots of software that you would have rather had, you know, piles and piles of cassettes, or lots and lots of cartridges to do the same as this is doing now, and it's instant loading just like cartridges. So there's, you know, you still get the same look, the same feel. Now, I could have waited to get a motherboard, and I could have waited to find out all of the parts that I needed for this machine to get it up and running, but it was a pile of junk. And it, you know, there is a point where it's too far gone. Even this one needs some work doing to the case. It also has the #1 key, the little contact in there isn't very good, so that has to be changed. I mean, it works for now, but it needs to be done. But, you know, it would just end up in landfill otherwise. And now I've got a machine I can use on a daily basis. I can just plug it in, play a game, you know, nothing to worry about. I can use BASIC on it. I can use anything else that I would have normally used a Ti99 4A on. And also, because it's emulated, it also emulates the speech system, which would have been another add-on on one of these, and another point of failure and so on. And, you know, I'm kind of getting the best of both worlds by doing this. Now, I'm not saying that the original hardware isn't a bad idea. because we need to keep that going. We need to keep the old Texas Instruments original Ti99 with the original circuitry inside them and the original look and feel going as long as possible. But as a daily use machine, as something that you can just plug and play basically, you can't really get much closer than this. And it doesn't cost a lot of money, it's just a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and you get something that's eminently usable. So let's have a look at how it was done. Let's have a look at what you really need to make this work, and let's have a look at the software library that you can have built into one of these. Well, I was going through my pile of bits, and this is what's left of a Ti99 after it's repaired a number of other machines. Out of this machine I've actually repaired 4 separate machines, and this is basically the junk that's left. Okay, so there's 2 of them here which have been successfully repaired. One just under those cables there, and this one as well. So I've got 4 machines that have been repaired. But the biggest problem with the Ti99, especially the European or the UK model, which uses PAL, it's very difficult to replace the video out or the RF out with anything else. You can't really convert it to composite because it doesn't work very well, and you're really kind of stuck with good old-fashioned RF. Now, I was looking at these pile of bits here and I think, why don't I make a modern machine out of this Ti99 in a kind of similar fashion that I did to the Commodore VIC-20, but it actually just being a dedicated Texas Instruments Ti99. So that got me thinking, so that's what I've decided to have a look into, and you know, just to see if the concept kind of works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace all of this here, the power board, the main PCB, the shielding that went into a Ti99 and I'm going to replace it with the Raspberry Pi, a little case to keep it nice and tidy inside the machine, a few standoffs, and a USB keyboard converter. Hopefully it's all mapped and ready to go, because this is basically what I ordered, so it should be a nice little piece of kit once it's sorted out. And then all you're going to be left is a cable between them both, a USB cable, a power in to the Pi, and HDMI out, and that should enable you to use modern TVs and use all of the software from an SD card rather than cassette tapes and cartridges. And the other thing I'm going to reuse is the keyboard and obviously the case. Okay, so first of all, the keyboard. The Ti99 has one of the nicest action keyboards ever produced. It's really good. Even this one, which was the slightly more cost reduced one, and it has slightly different key switches to the earlier ones out there, but it's still an incredibly nice keyboard. It's quite small, but it feels nice and it just about works, given the size of it. So keyboard we're keeping, so I'll put this to one side. The case, the lid isn't particularly brilliant. It's got marks and it's basically all duffed up really. It's all scratched and scraped up. So I think I've got another one of these which I'm going to have a look at now. And this is the second case. Got a little bit of a glue mark here, which is just sticky glue which needs cleaning off, but generally the case, yeah, it's just mainly dusty. There's a couple of little tiny nicks in it, but if we take this away and have a look at the other one, it's in arguably better condition, but you know, I'll probably refurbish the lid anyway. So at the moment all I'm going to do is try and get this Ti99 4A up and running. So the first thing we're going to start off is the actual case itself. This is the bottom. There's a little metal plate here which you take away because you don't want it causing any earthing problems to any electronics you want to put in here. So the first thing we're going to do is figure out where we're going to put the Pi, and immediately it's quite obviously that was an expansion port cut out in the case, and I'm guessing that would be an ideal place for it, and it keeps it nice and neat. We don't have to adjust the case, which it would be nice to try and keep it as whole as possible, because you never know when I might get a system board and I might decide to put it back as a original Ti99 So it looks like it'll sit quite nicely there. Now that would probably take care of the USB ports. HDMI is facing the wrong way, but it's not a problem because I can use quite a long HDMI cable, and again there's a cutout at the back. I can take it around the post for security and then out the back of the machine. Same with the extension for your power here. You could take that around the back and out the machine. Don't really need audio out, so that can stay where it is, but if I ever wanted to add in a headphone jack, I could just take it to here and drill a small hole in there and put a 3.5mm jack in there, and that would keep everything nice and tidy. So I think we'd do that, and it basically saves us chopping up the case. So that's probably the best position for this. The keyboard interface, the USB interface, is pretty much regulated by where you're going to put the keyboard in. So basically it's just going to connect onto here and it'll sit within the case. Then the USB cable comes out and will loop into here. Now the reason I'm going to make all 4 USB ports external is because I want to probably use this as something else as well, and like all the machines I do, it's really to be used as other things, so they're a bit more useful than just replicating the original hardware. So I'm going to have this USB cable come out and then back into here. So if I ever want to use this as a keyboard for anything else, I can just basically unplug the cable and use it for something else. So that's the plan anyway. So that will keep everything nice and simple, so I can use USB joystick ports straight outside, no extensions needed, no extra cabling, and less mess inside the case. Well, that's the plan. So with the keyboard, the idea is to have the adapter just here, and then that will be on the underside of the case, so it will be all nicely put away on little standoffs, so it makes it a nice and tidy build. So that's the idea. So you basically roughly got the area in. It's going to be USB cable across to here, and then hopefully fingers crossed, that's not going to be far away. So let's get the machine put together and see how it turns out. Now the first thing we're going to use a Raspberry Pi case, one of the official Pi cases, and we're going to build it up in an official Pi case. So we're just going to drop it in like so, and we're just going to pop the actual lid on as well. So nice and clicky. See, it's got 2 or 4 rubber feet on it, and as I don't really want to start hacking into a case, this actually, I've tested it and it's a nice compression fit here once you screw the keyboard top in, so there's no actual chopping or gluing into the case, so the case can always be reused again. Don't need the sides or the lid on. It'll give it a bit more airflow as well and keep it cooler. So once it's in position here, it's a nice compression fit and it doesn't go anywhere. all we have to do then is find a way of mounting these standoffs on here on the underside of the case to keep it all tidy. So we're going to move the keyboard out of the way for a minute, and then what we're going to do is move the rest of this case out of the way, and we're going to assemble the keyboard. Okay, so we've got the keyboard and we have the case itself. So you've got to be very careful with the keyboards on these because the ribbon connector is very flimsy and it does pull out, and if that happens you're going to have a bit of a time trying to resolder all of these cables back to the board. So just take your time and be very, very gentle with it. There's only 4 screws to screw in, and that holds the keyboard in place, and they're only small Phillips screws, so we're just going to pop them in and hold the keyboard in. Okay, so there's your first 2 in. There's only another 2 on this side that hold the keyboard in place, so no rush to this. And we're just going to put the final screw in. Keyboard's in nice and tight now, nice and firm, and we're going to mount this here. Okay, so once you've screwed the keyboard in, we're just going to make sure this is seated correctly because we know where we're going to put it now. We just slot it in nice and gently, just tuck it apart so you can see how it slots in. Okay, once you're certain, you just got to pop the standoffs on, so they just pop in nice and gently. Just clip them in one at a time. And then what you do is you just line them up where you want them on the case, and then just gently pop it into place. And then that's it. That's down on the case where you want it to be. Okay, so that's the first 2 parts done, and the second part relies on the bottom of the case, so we're going to move this out of the way and we're going to then swap it with the bottom of the case. So this one's nice and easy because it's going to be a compression fit here, and there's a little tab here which it lines up nicely against, so all you need to do really is get your cabling ready. Okay, this cable is going to come around and into the USB controller. The next cable is your HDMI cable, which is here, and this one's going to go from the front of here and then that's going to go out the back of the case once it's all in place. And the final cable we're going to use is the power cable, which is just a general USB cable. I'm going to use quite a long cable here, so you got enough room to plug it into whatever you need to plug it into. So again, keep this all in one place, and then all you need to do is tidy up the cabling ready to fit the lid. Okay, so that's roughly the layout of the wiring. The top sits against this post, so these cables now have something to pull against if somebody's a bit rough with the cable, so they don't pull anything apart. And then all that's left is this cable here to plug into your USB controller. So one of the first things I'm going to do is put the Ti99 4A image on here, and we're going to pop this into the Pi so it's a permanent feature of this machine. Okay, so it's put the pre-assembled lid on, the bit we did earlier with these 2 units here. There's quite a bit of cable on here, which is nice, so what we're going to do is we're going to use this and plug it together. Okay, and then all we need to do is to tidy up the wiring and then put the lid on the case. Which it sits together like so, and it looks like a proper Ti994A. So I'm just going to put the screws in and then we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that's all the screws back in the machine, and if we turn it over, we kind of have something that looks like a Ti994A. The only difference is you have a little USB port on the side, and then you just have your power cables and your HDMI out of here. That's with the machine on its side with your ports here. Okay, you can put a black case on, but it's the red one is the one I had at the time, so that's why it's red, but I probably will change it for a black one at some point. And there we have a Ti9994A home screen, which is quite cool on a HDMI TV. Okay, so this is the Ti994A running, and you've got a little LED here. Now when it's green, it's in a PC state, the keyboard, so it's just basically emulating a standard keyboard for a PC or a Raspberry Pi running a desktop or something very similar to that. So it can use as a standard keyboard where you have the function keys along the top by using your function buttons, etc. When it's in the red, it's now emulating a Ti994A, and you've also got function key, which if I do function Q, you can see if I pan up, you can see a list of the software that's now on this machine. And again, function for the arrow keys exactly the same as it was, and so you can scroll around the screen selecting whichever program you want to do. So I think I'll do Jet Set Willy, press enter. You get back to the normal Texas home screen, and it's press space, 1 for basic, drops you straight into basic, 2 for Jet Set Willy. And it's just Jet Set Willy running on the machine now. Just pause it so you can see. Now control or function and Q takes you back to the main menu, and then you can just use function and you can basically scroll around and find another game that you want. Let's see, quite a classic, we'll go for Parsec. Okay, you go back to the main screen, press the key, 2 for Parsec, and you can hear the speech on a Ti99 working now. Which is something you don't get standard on the Ti, because you needed the speech pack, which then allowed you to have the speech, but this does the whole lot, emulating the speech, everything that the Ti994A could do. And for its time, you can tell that it was quite advanced really when you think about it, with that kind of speech back in the very early 1980s. Okay, another example of this is Night Law. And then you have night load running on your Ti99 4A. Oh, how about video chess, one of the early games? Or if you really wanted to, go straight into basic, and you get the normal Ti99 basic prompt. On this machine it's function 0 to reset the machine, function Q to go into the list, and then you need to select whatever you want to select. So go back to Jet Set Willy, and it does a restart just like you were doing a cartridge, and then just press it as normal. So there's a once junk machine that had been used to repair other machines, and it was left to basically rot in a box, forgotten. Now it's actually a working Ti99 4A, albeit in a modern form, but looks, feels, and for all intents and purposes it is still a Ti99 4A, and it still has the same functionality. So when you see the original Ti99 4A screen, there's no real escaping that. The look, the feel, the way it works is exactly the same as the original, and it's going to be a lot more reliable. It's got built-in software, and there's no cassette tapes or cartridges or anything failing that will stop this thing from working going forward. So needs a little bit of refurbishment on the case, as you can probably see, but the whole point of today was to try and get a working machine rather than a pile of junk sitting in the corner, and that's I'd say was quite successful. Okay, so the Ti99 4A still running, playing in the background. You've seen how it was put together. It's not a massive amount of effort in, you know, the way it's put together. It's just a couple of circuit boards and some cabling, and you don't even have to destroy the case if you do it this way. So you can effectively reuse this machine if you do eventually get a motherboard for it, or you do eventually get the parts that you need to make it original again. Until that point, everything you see here can be reused. It can be put back together. It can be made into an original Ti99 4A at any time you want, because it's non-destructive. There's nothing cut, nothing glued, nothing chopped about, nothing changed. So all you have to do is put the original board back in, and then you have an original machine. Now, some people say emulation is a bit of a cop-out, but I don't think so. I think you get best of both worlds on emulation. I think you get best of both worlds on the software choice, and I also think you get more than the best of both worlds as far as reliability is concerned, because it's modern, it's current, it's going to last, and it's going to be probably another 30 years before this might need to be reconstructed and so on. But you know, with a bit of luck, it's going to last a lot longer than that. So this is my idea. I think going forward, I think I should try and rescue more junk machines and use emulation or modern hardware as far as possible to keep the function, the look, the feel, the software and everything else that associated with the look of this machine preserved and useful. So rather than putting this machine in the bin or leaving it as a pile of scrap in the corner, it's now a great machine to use. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it gives you a few ideas, and I hope going forward, rather than binning that non-working machine that you can't quite get the parts for, or you can't get your fix for it, or you can't find the fault that's causing it not to work, we'll take the innards out and hopefully go down this route. Okay, so there's going to be a few more emulation machines coming, but I've got a few other bits and pieces to get out before then. But hopefully in the future it'll be some of the more modern machines we're emulating, or slightly more modern compared to this, sort of from the 16-bit era, and you know, that's what I want to do very shortly. Also, I'd like to finish off a ZX Spectrum build with an original ZX Spectrum keyboard and case, and build it into a machine very similar in the way it kind of looks and feels to the current Spectrum next. So let's have a look, let's go forward, let's subscribe, get a few more people interested in this channel, and a few more ideas from yourselves as well, because at the end of the day, some of the videos that I've done have come from suggestions from yourselves. Okay, people who watch this would like to see something added, taken away, something different, something new, and those kind of suggestions are always welcome. Okay, so thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I hope you will join me again on this channel shortly. Thanks a lot.